welcome to episode. We're going to be doing daily devotions, and then we're going to be doing the Bible, and then we're going to be doing something, and then we're going to be doing the Return of the King. I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to hit the like. No, not to hit the like button. I'm gonna do a weird one again. How's that sound? Okay.
How about explode the like button?
No. Shoot the like button. Explode the subscribe button. And bang the ring. No, not ring the bell. Bang the gong. I don't know.
Okay, now it's time for
Daniel. It's time for Daily Devotion with Daniel.
Hello. And now for Devotions with Daniel. Okay. One less is more, August 31st. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, that you may abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Romans 15:13. Les plays a significant role in our lives. On the one hand, it's good to be fearless, ceaseless, ageless, cordless, errorless, guiltless, painless, and odorless. On the other hand, we don't want to be jobless, friendless, homeless, penniless, fruitless, shiftless, spineless, aimless, careless, feckless, or lifeless, especially lifeless. But of all the things we don't want to have less of, none is as important as hope. We definitely need to have less hopelessness. I said it. Hopelessness. Sorry. Okay. In Romans 5:3-5, the Apostle Paul has a way of explaining why hope is an ultimate value to grasp in life and how it derives from an unlikely source. Tribulation, he writes, produces perseverance and character and character hope. Now hope does not disappoint, because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts by the Holy Spirit who has given it to us. When we lose hope in the face of tribulation, it means we have lost sight of God's love that was poured out in our heart. And to lose touch of God's love, to be loveless, is to lose touch with the greatest thing of all. 1 Corinthians 13:13. Hope, then, is a measure of our realization of God's love. Grasp His love today, and you will grasp hope as well. Christianity knows nothing of hopeless cases.
Greetings, one and all. We are on 2 Samuel chapter 22. We're almost done with 2 Samuel. There's just a few more chapters left. And this is the English Standard Version of the Bible. Is everybody up there? Waiting for people.
22 is one of the long ones.
So this is the English Standard Version of the Bible. Let me begin. And David spoke to the Lord the words of this song on the day when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge. My Savior, you save me from violence. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. For the waves of death encompassed me, the torrents of destruction assailed me, the cords of Sheol entangled me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called upon the Lord, to my God I called. From his temple he heard my voice, and my cry came to his ears. Then the earth reeled and rocked, the foundations of the heavens trembled and quaked, because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils, and devouring fire from his mouth. Glowing coals flamed forth from him. He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He was seen on the wings of the wind. He made darkness around him his canopy, thick clouds a gathering of water. Out of the brightness before him, coals of fire flamed forth. The Lord thundered from heaven, and the Most High uttered his voice, and he sent out arrows and scattered them, lightning and routed them. Then the channels of the sea were seen, and the foundations of the world were laid bare, and the rebuke of the Lord at the blast of the breath of his nostrils. He sent from on high, he took me. He drew me out of many waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy, from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. The Lord dealt with me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands he rewarded me. For I have kept the way of the Lord, and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his rules were before me, and from his statutes I did not turn aside. I was blameless before him, and I kept myself from guilt. And the Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness in his sight. With the merciful you show yourself merciful. With the blameless man you show yourself blameless. With the purified you deal purely. And with the crooked you make yourself seem torturous. You save a humble person, but your eyes are on the haughty to bring them down. For you are my lamp, O Lord, and my God lightens my darkness. For by you I can run against a troop, and by my God I can leap over a wall. This God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord proves true. He is a shield for all those who take refuge in him. For who is God but the Lord? And who is a rock except our God? This God is my strong refuge, and has made my way blameless. He made my feet like the feet of a deer, and set me secure on the heights. He trains my hands for war, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have given me the shield of your salvation, and your gentleness made me great. You have a wide place for my steps under me, and my feet did not slip. I pursued my enemies and destroyed them, and did not turn back until they were consumed. I consumed them, I thrust them through, so that they did not rise. They fell under my feet. For you equipped me with strength for the battle. You made those who rise against me sink under me. You made my enemies turn their backs to me, those who hated me, and I destroyed them. They looked, but there was none to save. They cried to the Lord, but he did not answer them. I beat them fine as the dust of the earth. I crushed them and stamped them down like the mire of the streets. You delivered me from strife with my people. You kept me as the head of the nations. People whom I had not known served me. Foreigners came cringing to me. As soon as they heard of me, they obeyed me. Foreigners lost heart and came trembling out of their fortresses. The Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and exalted be my God, and exalted be my God, the rock of my salvation, the God who gave me vengeance and brought down peoples under me, who brought me out from my enemies. You exalted me above those who rose against me. You delivered me from men of violence. For this I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations, and sing praises to your name. Great salvation he brings to his king, and shows steadfast love to his anointed, to David and his offspring forever. And I'm going to just finish the verse portion here. So I'm going to start chapter 23, and then we'll finish that tomorrow. Now, these are the last words of David. The oracle of David, the son of Jesse, the oracle of the man who was raised on high, the anointed of the God of Jacob, the sweet psalmist of Israel. The Spirit of the Lord speaks by me. His word is on my tongue. The God of Israel has spoken. The rock of Israel has said to me, when one rules justly over men, ruling in the fear of God, he dawns on them like the morning light, like the sun shining forth on a cloudless morning, like rain that makes grass to sprout from the earth. For does not my house stand so with God? For he has made with me an everlasting covenant, ordered in all things and secure. For will he not cause to prosper all my help and my desire? But worthless men are all like thorns that are thrown away, for they cannot be taken with the hand. But the man who touches them arms himself with iron and the shaft of a spear, and they are utterly consumed with fire. And I think my plan for tomorrow is to go ahead and finish 23 and finish 24, and then we'll be done with 2 Samuel. It is a little bit longer reading tomorrow, but that will be okay. And it might not be tomorrow because that's we're doing Awanas on Wednesday nights. So, in the last section of our story, of course, the first chapter was all about Pippin, and this chapter was all about Merry. And Merry hung out with Aragorn and with Gimli and with Legolas, and they went back to Helm's Deep. And when they got to Helm's Deep, the people that were still there, of course, they defeated the orcs. And yes, there's that big great scene with Éowyn where Éowyn gets mad at Aragorn and stabs him in the chest, and then Aragorn dies. But the rest of them, they all okay, here's Kimberly to say how it really happened.
Yeah, Dad has come up with amazing creative ways to kill everybody. Eowyn did get mad at him because he said that she can't go with him. Because Merry, he's still with the king, actually.
Why did Aragorn say that she couldn't go with him?
I was gonna explain. Okay. I just wanted to correct something that Dad said first. So what happened is, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas. Sorry, I'm really bad with names again. Them and the rest of the Rangers, they're going to the path. They're going through the Path of the Dead. So if you want to see on the map, they're in Rohan here, and they need to get to Gondor, and the fastest way without the pass is all the way around. But they need to get here like within the next 2 days, and it takes like a week or 3 days or something like that to get all the way around. No, wait, it would take 3 days to get the might of Rohan all gathered together from everywhere. And then it would take them longer to get over to Gondor. So they're taking all the rangers over down through here so that they can
You've researched the geography. That's really impressive.
No, I looked at this while we were reading.
You know what that's called? Researching the geography.
So then they went through, and it was like black as night. Even Gimli couldn't see. And, he's a dwarf, so he has good night vision or something like that. And, when they finally got through, they felt like someone was following them. And once they got to the top of this hill, the army of the dead emerged, and they're fighting with Aragorn and everybody else. And right now they're going to the city so that they can defend it from all the orcs and the bad guys. One thing I wanted to tell you about the lore of the army of the dead. Basically, back the army, it's actually a bunch of people back in Isildur's time, the last king of Gondor. And so they were supposed to help, but they broke their oath, and then they ran away, and then they didn't die, and for some reason, like, I don't know why, but eventually
Because it's a story.
yeah. But basically they're like the Walking Dead. And so they're going to fight with Aragorn, and when they fight for Aragorn, Isildur's heir, they're gonna repay their debt so they can die. And
So they can rest.
Yeah, they can rest.
Or another one, yeah.
However you want to put it. I'm going to hand it off to Dad, who's going to read us a story.
Okay, so we never talked about Éowyn. So the reason why Aragorn said that Éowyn couldn't go with them was because it wasn't Aragorn's place to override the wishes of her king, Theoden, and Theoden wished for her to be the person to take charge of Edoras. I think that's the name of the city that they take charge of. It's a really remarkable set, by the way, in the movie. Also, I would like to point out that JJ said that he's never seen The Walking Dead, and I will also point out that neither have I. Okay, so, and not really interested. Okay, so this is chapter 3, The Muster of Rohan. So you didn't know, but mustard actually comes from Rohan. Okay, that's okay. Not mustard, not the mustard of Rohan, the muster of Rohan, which is obviously a gathering of troops. All right, so enough talk.
You need to do that over here, and you do not talk. If you can't do it without talking, you can't do it. Be nicer.
So we are experiencing technical difficulties, and I think the technical difficulties will be over in 5,
years.
4, 3, 2, 1, and they're over. All right, so now we're going to read chapter 3, the muster, not the mustard, of Rohan. Now all roads were running together to the east to meet the coming of war and the onset of the shadow, and even as Pippin stood at the great gate of the city and saw the prince of Dol Amroth ride in with his banners. The king of Rohan came down out of the hills. Of course, we may have neglected to say that Pippin pledged his allegiance to King Theoden, which is probably a lot more sane man than Denethor, but that's more to... Wait, Pippin? This is Pippin. Merry pledged his allegiance to
the King of
Theoden.
Gondor.
Yeah, the king of Gondor, which is not Gondor, Rohan,
Oh.
which is Theoden.
One of them
All right.
did one of them, and the other did the other.
Yep. Yes, that's the irony. So Merry and Pippin are pledged allegiance to the two kings independently without talking about it. All right, let me keep going. Day was waning. In the last rays of the sun, the riders cast long pointed shadows that went on before them. Darkness had already crept beneath the murmuring fir woods that clothed the steep mountain sides. The king rode now slowly at the end of the day. Presently the path turned round a huge bare shoulder of rock and plunged into the gloom of soft sighing trees. Down, down they went in a long winding file. When at last they came to the bottom of the gorge, they found that evening had fallen in the deep places. The sun was gone. Twilight lay upon the waterfalls. All day, far below them, a leaping stream had run down from the high pass behind, cleaving its narrow way between pine-clad walls, and now through a stony gate it flowed out and passed into a wider vale. The riders followed it, and suddenly Harrowdale lay before them, loud with the noise of waters in the evening. There the white Snowburn, joined by the lesser stream, went rushing, fuming on the stones, down to Edoras and the green hills and the plains. Away to the right, at the head of the great dale, the mighty Starkhorn loomed up above, its vast buttresses swathed in cloud, but its jagged peak, clothed in everlasting snow, gleamed far above the world, blue-shadowed upon the east, red-stained by the sunset in the west. Merry looked out in wonder upon the strange country of which he had heard many tales upon their long road. It was a skyless world in which his eye, through dim gulfs of shadowy air, saw only ever-mounting slopes, great walls of stone behind great walls, and frowning precipices wreathed with mist. He sat for a moment, half dreaming, listening to the noise of war, the whisper of dark trees, the crack of stone, and the vast waiting silence that brooded behind all sound. He loved mountains, or he had loved the thought of them. Marching on the edge of stories brought them far away, but now he was borne down by the insupportable weight of Middle-earth. He longed to shut out the immensity in a quiet room by a fire. He was very tired, for though they had ridden slowly, they had ridden with very little rest. Hour after hour, for nearly 3 weary days, he had jogged up and down over passes and through long dales and across many streams. Sometimes, where the way was broader, he had ridden at the king's side, not noticing that many of the riders smiled to see the two together, the hobbit on his little shaggy gray pony, and the Lord of Rohan on his great white horse. Then he had talked to Theoden, telling him about his home and the doings of the Shire folk, or listening in turn to tales of the Mark and its mighty men of old. But most of the time, especially on this last day, Merry had ridden by himself just behind the king, saying nothing and trying to understand the slow, sonorous speech of Rohan that he heard the men behind him using. It was a language in which there seemed to be many words that he knew, though spoken more richly and strongly than in the Shire. Yet he could not piece the words together. At times some rider would lift up his clear voice in in stirring song, and Merry felt his heart leap, though he did not know what it was about. All the same, he had been lonely, and never more so than now at the day's end. He wondered where in all this strange world Pippin had got to, and what would become of Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli. Then suddenly, like a cloud touch on his heart, he thought of Frodo and Sam. "I am forgetting them," he said to himself reproachfully, "and yet they are more important than all the rest of us, and I came to help them, but now they must be hundreds of miles away if they are still alive." He shivered. "Harrowdale at last," said Eomer. "Our journey is almost at the end." They halted. The paths out of the narrow gorge fell steeply. Only a glimpse, as through a tall window, could be seen of the great valley in the gloaming below. A single small light could be seen twinkling by the river. "This journey is over, maybe," said Theoden, "but I have far yet to go. Last night the moon was full, and in the morning I shall ride to Edoras to the gathering of the Mark." "But if you would take my counsel," said Eomer in a low voice, "you would then return hither, until the war is over, lost or won." Theoden smiled. "Nay, my son, for so I will call you. Speak not the soft words of Worm-tongue in my old ears." He drew himself up and looked back at the long line of his men fading into the dusk behind. "Long years in the space of days it seems since I rode west, but never will I lean on a staff again. If the war is lost, what good will be hiding in the hills? And if it is won, what grief will it be, even if I fall, spending my last strength? But we will leave this now. Tonight I will lie in the hold of Dunharrow. One evening of peace at least is left to us. Let us ride on." In the deepening dusk they came down into the valley. Here the snowbourn flowed near to the western walls of the dale, and soon the path led them to a ford where the shallow waters murmured loudly on the stones. The ford was guarded. As the king approached, many men sprang up out of the shadow of the rocks, and when they saw the king, they cried with glad voices, "Theoden King! Theoden King! The King of the Mark returns!" Then one blew a long call on a horn. It echoed in the valley. Other horns answered it, and light shone out across the river. And suddenly there rose a great chorus of trumpets from high above, sounding from some hollow place, as it seemed, that gathered their notes into one voice and sent it rolling and beating on the walls of stone. So the King of the Mark came back victorious out of the west to Dunharrow beneath the feet of the White Mountains. There he found the remaining strength of his people already assembled. For as soon as his coming was known, captains rode to meet him at the ford, bearing messages from Gandalf. Dunhere, chieftain of the folk of Harrowdale, was at their head. "At dawn 3 days ago, Lord," he said, "Shadowfax came like a wind out of the west to Edoras, and Gandalf brought tidings of your victory to gladden our hearts. But he brought also word from you to hasten the gathering of the riders. And then came the winged shadow." "The winged shadow," said Theoden. "We saw it also, but that was in the dead of night before Gandalf left us." "Maybe, Lord," said Dunhere, "yet the same or another like to it, a flying darkness in the shape of a monstrous bird passed over Edoras that morning, and all men were shaken with fear, for it stooped upon Meduseld, and as it came low, almost to the gable, there came a cry that stopped our hearts. There it was that Gandalf counseled us not to assemble in the fields, but to meet you here in the valley under the mountains. And he bade us to kindle no more lights or fires than barest need asked. So it has been done. Gandalf spoke with great authority. We trust that it is as you would wish. Naught has been seen in Harrowdale of these evil things." "It is well," said Theoden. "I will ride now to the hold, and there before I go to rest I will meet the marshals and the captains. Let them come to me as soon as may be." The road now led eastward, straight across the valley, which was at that point little more than half a mile in width. Flats and meads of rough grass, gray now in the falling night, lay all about them, but in front of the far side of the dale Merry saw a frowning wall, a last outlier of great roots of the Starkhorn, cloven by the river in ages past. On the level spaces there was great concourse of men, some thronged to the roadside, hailing the king and the riders from the west with glad cries, but stretching away into the distance behind there was ordered rows of tents and booths, and lines of picketed horses, and great store of arms, and piled spears bristling like thickets of new-planted trees. Now all the great assembly was falling into shadow, and yet, though the night chill blew cold from the heights, no lanterns glowed, no fires were lit. Watchmen, heavily cloaked, paced to and fro. Merry wondered how many riders there were. He could not guess their number in the gathering gloom, but it looked to him like a great army, many thousands strong. While he was peering from side to side, the king's party came up under the looming cliff on the eastern side of the valley, and there suddenly the path began to climb, and Merry looked up in amazement. He was on a road the like of which he had never seen before, a great work of men's hands in years beyond the reach of song. Upwards it wound, coiling like a snake, boring its way across the sheer slope of rock. Steep as a star, it looped backward and forward as it climbed. Up it horses could walk, and wains could be slowly hauled, but no enemy could come that way, except out of the air. If it was defended from above. At each turn of the road there were great standing stones that had been carved in the likeness of men, huge and clumsy-limbed, squatting cross-legged, with their stumpy arms folded on fat bellies. Some in the wearing of the years had lost all features save the dark holes of their eyes that still stared sadly at the passers-by. The riders hardly glanced at them. The Pukul men, they called them, and heeded them little. No power or terror was left in them, but Merry gazed at them with wonder and a feeling almost of pity, and as they loomed up mournfully in the dark. After a while, he looked back and found that he had already climbed some hundreds of feet above the valley, but still far below he could dimly see a winding line of riders crossing the ford and filing along the road toward the camp prepared for them. Only the king and his guard were growing up into the hold. At last the king's company came to a sharp brink, and the climbing road passed into a cutting between walls of rock, and so went up a short slope and out on to a wide upland. The Farienfeld, men called it. Farienfeld. We'll call it Farienfeld. A green mountain field of grass and heath, high above the deep-delved courses of the Snowbourn, laid upon the lap of the great mountains behind the Starkhorn southwards, and northwards the saw-toothed mass of Irinsaga, between which there faced the riders, the grim black wall of Dwimmerberg, the haunted mountain, rising out of the steep slopes of somber pines. Dividing the upland into two, there marched a double line of unshaped standing stones that dwindled into the dusk and vanished in the trees. Those who dared to follow that road came soon to the black Dimholt under the Dwimmerberg, and the menace of the pillar of stone and the yawning shadow of the forbidden door.
JJ, what's going on? Damon?
Okay, we're going to pause here and show you the picture. And Daniel and JJ need to find another activity, I think.
Boys, come on.
Here's the picture. Daniel.
Yes.
Put it down. Picture of the mountains. All right. So, such was the dark Dunharrow, the work of long-forgotten men. Their name was lost, and no song or legend remembered it. For what purpose they had made this place, as a town or secret temple or a tomb of kings, none in Rohan could say. Here they labored in the dark years, before ever a ship came to the western shores, or Gondor of the Dunedain was built. And now they had vanished, and only the old Pukul men were left, still sitting at the turnings of the road. Mary stared at the lines of marching stones. They were worn and black. Some were leaning, some were fallen, some cracked or broken. They looked like rows of old and hungry teeth. He wondered what they could be, and he hoped that the king was not going to follow them into the darkness beyond. Then he saw that there were clusters of tents and booths on either side of the stony way, but these were not set near the trees, and seemed rather to huddle away from them toward the brink of the cliff. The greater number were on the right, where the Furienfeld was wider, and on the left there was a smaller camp, in the midst of which stood a tall pavilion. From this side a rider now came out to meet them, and they turned from the road. As they drew near, Mary saw that the rider was a woman with long braided hair gleaming in the twilight, yet she wore a helm and was clad to the waist like a warrior and girded with a sword. "Hail, Lord of the Mark!" she cried. "My heart is glad at your returning." "And you, Eowyn," said Theoden, is all well with you?" "All is well," she answered. Yet it seemed to Mary that her voice belied her, and he would have thought that she had been weeping, if that could have been believed of one so stern of face. "All is well. It was a weary road for the people to take, torn suddenly from their homes. There were hard words, for it is long since war has driven us from the green fields, but there have been no evil deeds. All is now ordered, as you see, and your lodging is prepared for you, for I have had full tidings of you, and knew the hour of your coming." "So Aragorn has come then," said Eomer. "Is he still here?" "No, he has gone," said Eowyn, turning away and looking at the mountains dark against the east and the south. "Whither did he go?" asked Eomer. "I do not know," she answered. "He came at night and rode away yestermorn, ere the sun had climbed over the mountain tops. He is gone." "You are grieved, daughter," said Theoden. "What has happened? Tell me. Did he speak of that road?" He pointed away along the darkening lines of stones toward the Dwimmerberg, of the paths of the dead. "Yes, my lord," said Eowyn, "and he has passed into the shadow from which none have returned. I could not dissuade him. He is gone." "Then our paths are sundered," said Eomer. "He is lost. We must ride without him, and our hope dwindles." Hey, so I think we need to stop here because we're having some... Yeah, we're having some problems with obedience. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I know it's the middle of the chapter and we just started, but we will finish the chapter next time that we get going. And God bless you. Have a good night.